How not to blow up your rifle. This week on Mail Call Mondays. Mail Call Mondays is brought to you by MDT. If you need a chassis system for your precision rifle, check out mdttac.com. I'm John McQuay with 8541 Tactical, and this is Mail Call Mondays, the show that answers your questions about precision rifles, optics, and equipment. Today, we are going to talk a little bit about reloading, and we're going to talk about a situation that I came across while I was perusing some of the Facebook feeds. I follow a lot of different pages out there on Facebook in the gun community. One of the ones that I watch is the Virginia Precision Rifle Club's Facebook page. And recently a member had posted on there a picture of a catastrophic failure with an AR-15, and he had some reloading questions about it. Now there's no indication, and I didn't ask if the failure was from the individual that was posting it or if it was someone else and it was posting it for them. That's really immaterial because we're not here to make fun of anyone. We're here to use this as a learning point so that this same issue does not happen to other shooters. I definitely don't want any of you guys to have a catastrophic failure with your firearms and possibly run the risk of serious injury or great property damage. So we're going to discuss real quick about best practices when you are reloading, and then we are going to talk about specifically how to avoid this situation because the original poster actually came back with some additional information that leads us to believe we may know what actually caused this. So the pictures that he posted, and I'll throw them up for you guys to see, it is a Anderson AR-15 build, and I'm not going to make any comments on the quality of parts, but he mentioned that this had been running reliably prior to this point, and the failure that we're seeing here could not in any way, shape, or form have been caused by a lower receiver. So we don't know what the upper receiver is. It appears to be a standard mil-spec upper receiver. I have no idea what the bolt carrier group or the barrel is or any of those individual components. But when we look at it, what we can see is there was a catastrophic failure in the upper receiver. The bolt is still locked in to the barrel extension, and it appears that the bolt is still fully in battery. The carrier failed, and it really failed pretty badly. Pieces of the carrier are actually missing, and that really scares me when I look at that, because that tells me that carrier came off there with significant, or those pieces of the carrier came off with significant velocity. Now, looking at this, I would have expected the shooter to come away with some significant injuries. Apparently, that's not the case. He only had a little bit of shrapnel in his neck. And his hands, which usually are your strong side hand, is usually what gets the greatest damage when you have a failure like this. That apparently was not injured, and it appears that the fire control group is still in place. And interestingly to me, the magazine is still in place, although it looks like the magazine may have blown out because it's got a clear polymer window on it that is missing. So some things that we can come up with just looking at this is that the bolt was in battery, so this was not an out-of-battery ignition. Usually when we see stuff like this, a cartridge, for whatever reason, lights before the bolt fully locks and seals the chamber up. When that happens, it's just like a brass case pipe bomb going off in your upper receiver. There's nothing to actually contain that pressure, so it blows apart. It usually either blows the magazine out or it blows the round stack out of the bottom of the magazine, blows the port door off. It will usually fracture the upper receiver. So it's a pretty nasty failure when that occurs. Now, this, as I said, appears to not have been an out-of-battery ignition. This appears to be something to do with the actual loaded cartridge itself. And when the original poster actually put this up, he was asking, before he disclosed the grain weight and projectile weight that caused this, he wanted to know, for anyone that was using CFE 223 powder, what charge did they use and what bullet weight were they using? So we're going to talk about that really quick. For guys that have been or just getting into reloading, or you've been reloading for a while but you're reloading a new cartridge, the first thing that you need to do is you need to grab a load manual. Not necessarily this one. This is a 7th edition Hornady book, which I use a lot of Hornady bullets, and even if you're not using that specific bullet, the starting charges are still fairly applicable to the different grain weight bullets. That's not always the case, especially if you're talking about different bullet constructions, copper solids, lead, etc. But for a standard lead core copper jacketed bullet, you can extrapolate starting charges fairly well. However, the best way to do it is actually find a starting load for your specific powder and your specific bullet in your specific case. And if you are starting from scratch, the reloading manual will tell you what bullet, what powder, and what case, and what type of primer that you need to buy to load for that. And again, if you're starting out, and we did a whole reloading series that I'll link to above, you need to go buy the book. Don't swing it. Don't grab your cousin's, uncle's, sister's, brother's favorite hunting load and just throw it together and put it in your gun. You really, really need to use what the book tells you to start with. And then following the steps that we put in our reloading series, work up to finding out where that pressure limit is in your gun. So you really need to make sure that you're not trying to mix and match different powder loads. Wildcatting is great, but wildcatting is only for really experienced reloaders when they start trying different things that are not published. Sometimes you can run into situations where a new powder comes out on the market, and there you have to dig a little bit deeper. You have to call the powder manufacturer or go to their website to get the specific load for the weight bullet that you are working with. But it's well worth it to avoid blowing a gun up. Even if you've been using a powder, say you used a certain type of powder 10 years ago and you're going back to that same powder now, maybe a good idea to pick up a current generation loading manual and look at what that charge weights are recommended for that powder, because sometimes formulations of powder change over the years. So you want to make sure you're going good, and always, anytime you change anything in your load, your bullet, your powder, your case, your primer, you need to drop back down at least 10%, if not all the way back to the starting load, and do your load workup again, checking for any kind of pressure signs. You may end up exactly back at that same cartridge or that same charge weight, that same cartridge overall length, everything as your initial load, but it's really a good idea to work up to it. That way you have that peace of mind to know you're not going to get a hot summer day and grenade your rifle. So that is really, that will keep you out of trouble. Going by what the book says, not just pulling information off the internet. In this case, we're talking about CFE 223. Hodgdon's website has a great reloading data center on it. So you can go in and you can put in the cartridge, the weight of the projectile, all that, and the powder that you want to use, and it will spit out starting and max charges for you, and it will give you the information that you need to start working up a load safely. Now, in this instance, the original poster came back, and he posted a little bit later on that he was using a 62 grain bullet, and he was using CFE 223. So we can go to Hodgdon's Reloading Center, and we can look up for the 223 for CFE 223 powder. We get a starting load of 25.3 grains. And we get a max load of 27.0 grains. And that's a difference between the starting is a pressure of 47,900 psi, and the maximum is 53,200 psi. So you see there's a huge range in there, and any AR-15 should be able to stand up to that maximum load. Now, you don't want to just jump to that. That's not the safe way to do it. But in my experience, published max loads are usually low for what modern rifles will take, because this load is in here so that if you go back and you get a an ancient 223 and you throw this load into it, something that is really maybe not a strong action, a break open action, something like that, then this load will still be relatively safe in that rifle. So they put a lot of safety window built into this. Now, when we go back and we look at what this individual posted, he posted that in this case, the charge that did this was 25 grains, and he was loading to a cartridge overall length of 2.25. So 25 grains and 2.25. 2.25 is the book listed cartridge overall length for that bullet, so it wasn't seated too deeply, it wasn't seated out too far, it was seated where it needed to be. And he was starting just a little bit under the published starting charge. Now, you don't want to go too far under the published starting charge because you can run into detonation issues there. If you've got too much air in the case and too little powder, instead of getting a controlled burn, you can get an explosion in the case. It's usually not the case with rifle powders. Rifle powders tend to burn a little bit slower than some of the other powders out there, but you still don't want to go too far below that. You go too far below that, you can also run into a situation where you have a bullet stuck in the bore. Now, initially, my thought looking at this explosion was I could have been a squib, where you get a bullet stuck just in the first inch or two of rifling, and you fire the next one behind it, and all that pressure doesn't have anywhere to go, and it has to come out somewhere, so it blows up and cooks the rifle. So in this instance, though, the poster said that the bullet actually left the bore and hit the target. So the bullet went down the barrel, and it was apparently, I don't know what range he was shooting at, it was apparently accurate enough to hit the target. So it wasn't a squib, because if it was a squib, your bullet's not going to leave the barrel. If both bullets do leave the barrel stacked together, they're probably not going to impact the target. They're probably going to go wild, and if they do, you should be able to see. So he comes back and posts a little bit more information later on, and what we get down to, what it seems like the likely cause is before this certain reloader started using CFE 223, he was loading with some pistol powder in his loading setup. Specifically, I believe he said he was using CFE pistol powder. And there's the possibility that when he switched over, there was still some pistol powder left in the powder drop or the powder dispenser that he was using. And this was the first case of this, or this first charge of this freshly reloaded stuff. So there's a good possibility that there was a large percentage of pistol powder in that rifle cartridge. And pistol powder has significantly different burn characteristics than rifle powder. You really do not want to mix the two. Now, there are situations where you would use pistol powder in a rifle cartridge. There are some pistol powders that I've used to develop subsonic loads for rifle cartridges, but there you need to be fairly experienced with what you're doing. You need to really pay attention. Some of the loading manuals do have subsonic loads with pistol powder and rifle cartridges listed, but it's really tricky business when you start to get into that. So be careful when you go that route. But you would never want to load a rifle cartridge, a supersonic rifle cartridge, with a mix of pistol and rifle powder. So in this instance, the combined energy was enough to cause a total failure of the system, and we're really lucky that it did not cause a serious injury to the shooter. So what I want you guys to get out of this is the most experienced reloaders in the world can get complacent and they can make mistakes. The setup behind me, if I move to the side, you'll see my two Charge Masters are sitting there with half hoppers of powder in them. Both Charge Masters have the same powder in them. Both of those still have reloader 15 in them because I was reloading 308 the last time at the bench. Now, usually I will leave the jug of powder that I'm loading out of on the bench sitting up there. But in this case, I'm using a 5 or 8 pound jug. I believe it's 8 pound jug of it. 8 pound jug takes up a little bit of room on my bench, so it's sitting down on the floor right in front of the bench. If I switch over to H4350, H4350 right now, I am running small 1 pound containers because that's all I could get at the time. So I will put the 1 pound container, actually sit it on top of the powder dispensers so I can see at a glance that's what's in there. I know some guys will write on note cards and then stick them down in the powder dispenser. So with the clear powder dispensers like we have here, or clear powder hoppers, you can see from outside of it what powder is on there. Probably something I'm going to start doing. I don't switch powders a lot. I usually try to load quite a bit with one powder, and then I'll take the time and completely switch everything over when I switch to the next caliber. But when I do, because I'm using powder dispensers like the RCBS powder dispensers, I have to go through and make sure that I clean everything out. So I will go through and take my trickler. I will dump my trickler back into the powder jug first. Then I will go open the dump valve on the side of the Charge Master and dump it into the powder dispenser. And I have a really nice long paintbrush that I will get down in there, and I will get every single grain of powder out of that dispenser. Every single grain. I will shake it, I will move it up. I actually pick the powder dispenser up and I will tilt it to make sure that there's nothing left in the straw, and then my paintbrush is small enough. I will run the paintbrush back through the dispensing straw to make sure I've knocked out any grains that are sitting in there. Now, one single kernel of Reloader 15, if I switched over to something else getting in there, or one single kernel of a pistol powder getting into a rifle cartridge is not going to blow your gun up. It may cause that cartridge to really not perform the way you expect it to perform, but it's not going to blow your gun up. But if you go to that standard to make sure every kernel is accounted for, then you don't have to worry about running into what we've run into here. Don't shortcut it if you're doing this. If you're switching over powder, switching up reloading setups, don't have Mail Call Mondays going on in the background. Don't let people in there to talk to you. Make sure you concentrate on the task until everything's switched over and everything's set up. Then go ahead and queue up the videos or let the kids come in to help you, whatever, and get on with your reloading process. But for the powder switchover, primer switchover, all that stuff, make sure you are concentrating, paying attention to what you're doing, and then before you go start and seat that first bullet, make sure you've double checked everything with the book or with your loading manual and make sure that you are switched over. So thankfully in this case it didn't cause any serious injuries, but it could have. And that brings up another really good point. Sometimes I am lax when I'm shooting precision rifle matches and I don't wear eye pro, especially if we are in really nasty humid days. When I am reloading or I'm doing a cartridge ladder or a test or something of that nature, I always wear eye protection. In fact, I may actually start making sure that I put gloves on as well, some nice high quality leather gloves that are going to prevent metal from going through my skin, or at least reduce the damage. Because really, I only have one set of eyes. I plan to live quite a bit longer, and I need these to last throughout the rest of my life. It's really hard to hit long-range targets if your eyes are jacked up. It's hard to pull a trigger if you're missing a finger. So we need to really be careful about this stuff, and we need to be safe about it. So that's enough preaching on that. I wanted to bring that to light because when somebody has an issue like this, I don't want to post this to make fun of them. I'm not picking on equipment. I'm not picking on anything. What I want it to be is an example to the rest of us that we need to be careful with what we're doing. Never get into the idea that it could never happen to me because that's when it does. Do not get complacent with this. I've been shooting for a long time. I've been reloading for a good portion of that. I always try to go overboard with the safety checks. It really makes for a more enjoyable time when we don't have to break out the first aid kits and start rendering aid to somebody. So that's my opinion on it. As always, I want to hear what you guys have to say. leave your comments down in the comments section below. Have you had a reloading oops in the past, or have you known somebody that has? If so, what was the mix-up, what was the cause, and what was the result? Please post your comments down below. I love to hear them, and I love to learn from what you guys are doing out there and what you guys have to say. So real quick, I'm going to talk about this thing that I have sitting in front of me. This is the Legacy MCX 16-inch that I'm working on. I now have a 16-inch 5.56 barrel on this, and I'm going to do a full rundown talking about why I went to the trouble to pick out a Legacy MCX when I've got the Virtus now, and SIG has moved on with later models. So we will talk about this in an upcoming video. But what I want to let you guys know right now is an update on the Cloud Defensive Rain. Cloud Defensive was nice enough to send us out. Actually, the one that I have on here is their pre-production version of the Rain, mounted on this rifle. Another rifle, I have the actual production version with their pressure pad on that is going through a burn-in right now. And I want to let you guys know that the Rain Micro has been running great. Now, this is the Micro. The larger Rain is about an inch longer than the Micro, has a longer runtime on it, but the Micro, because I was trying to keep this guy lightweight, works really great. It's got a great throw on it. It really punches out there. And so far, I've been really impressed with the Cloud Defensive products. Now, Cloud hasn't paid us anything. They're here like 15 minutes up the road from my house. So they're local guys, and I really love to support them. They put out a great product, and I love what they're doing and support the shooting community in general and law enforcement as well. So you'll get a full review of this soon. I have been putting off the Owl review for various different reasons for a while. But I have really kicked the snot out of the Owl that they sent me originally. So now seems like a really good time to do a compare and contrast between the Owl and the Rain, because I know there are a lot of guys out there that are trying to decide which will be better for their specific setup. And I think they both have some benefits. They both have some drawbacks in various different areas. So I really want to get that out and talk to you guys about that. One other piece of equipment that I am working on this is the SIG Romeo MSR red dot sight. Originally, I didn't think much about this sight because it runs about $100, $120 depending on where you're looking at it. It comes with lens caps, it comes with the mount, it comes with a battery. This is an absolute co-witness mount. I really would prefer that it was a lower third co-witness mount, but it's nice that it comes right out of the box with a fairly nice looking and working mount. But I've taken this out, I've run it through a basic patrol rifle class so far. I was assisting to instruct that class, so I was using this rifle to demo through the class, and it worked great for that. I just now noticed that I have left the optic on, and that was about a week ago, and it was on its highest intensity, and I've still got battery life on it. So I was happy to see that. It does have some really nice features that I was not expecting out of it. Mainly the elevation and windage adjustment does not have caps like the Romeo 4T has, or the Aimpoint, or a lot of other ones out there. Caps are nice because they keep dust and dirt and mud and stuff out, and they offer a little bit extra weather sealing. Caps suck because you will roll them off rubbing them against gear, and then you lose them at the range, and then you have to call the manufacturer and get spare caps. Now, I was nice enough, or SIG was nice enough when I called them and told them I lost one of the caps off of my Romeo 4T. They sent me a bag of caps, so that's cool, but it's nice that we don't need caps on this guy. They also sent a really nice tool that has a rounded adjuster on the end of it to perfectly fit the elevation and windage adjustments, so you don't have to chew it out with a multi-tool screwdriver. And the tool also has a Torx bit to install the mount, or install the mount on the rifle. Not a quick release mount, but at this price point, I didn't expect a quick release mount. I just want something that will hold it on nice and tight. And it comes with clear lens caps. So again, really nice deal for $100. Now, you miss the auto shake awake or auto off or the auto on. It's pretty much auto nothing. It's manual adjustment. It does have a couple of night vision settings on it, and it is bright enough to see in full sun. So we will be bringing the full review on that once I get closer to 1,000 rounds on it. I generally, especially with low-cost optics, don't like to jump into a review too soon because the repeated recoil on them can sometimes reveal some weaknesses that just an out-of-the-box unpacking wouldn't. So we'll have that coming really soon. But for a lightweight, low-cost setup, this looks like it may be a really good option. So again, I'll leave it to you guys. Have any of you guys tried the Romeo MSR? If you have, post your comment down below. And that's going to do it for this Mail Call Mondays. I did shoot the local NRL 22 match this last weekend, so next week I'll have a breakdown of the October NRL 22 matches, and so you guys can look forward to that. But if you like the video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Drop your comment down below or send it to us on Facebook or Twitter. And if you want to get notified when we release new content, make sure you click that little bell icon. If you guys want to help support the content that you know and love, please check us out over on Patreon. And until next time, get out and shoot.